Hello and welcome to Letters Home, a story of a World War II B-17 pilot from Lowell, Michigan in his own words. And he just so happens to be my grandpa. I'm your host, Annie Whitlock, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, my dad, Mitch McMahon, my aunt, Lori McMahon Summerfield, and Dale Croft from the Lowell Historical Museum.
In each episode of Letters Home, we're going to dive into letters written by my dad during his time in World War II that he sent to his parents, siblings, and friends back home in Lowell, Michigan. We'll be reading his own words and giving some context into what was happening in the world and in Lowell at the time he wrote these.
In this episode, we read about Dad's admiration for Scotland, a murder in a nearby town, and we also read a letter from another special someone, Dad's former football coach.
All right. Well, before we get into it, we have an update. Last episode, we had talked about Bruce's nieces and nephews because they'd signed the Christmas menu. And we were talking about how Frank Jr., his, I guess, youngest nephew at the time, had a nickname of Butch. And we couldn't figure out why that was. But we know now, thanks to a friend of the pod, Gail. And what did we come up with? Dale, you ran into her?
Well, I found out today when I was down at the museum doing a little bit last-minute research from Annette, another member of the McMahon family, a relationship, that Butch was named by the doctor who delivered him, Dr. Shepard,
So that nickname
which delivered
really goes
the
way
vast
back.
majority of, Lori, I don't think you said was, but Mitch is.
Yeah, we've talked about Dr. Shepard.
Yeah.
Delivering the McMahon
So
family.
anyway, when he was delivered and he held him, he said he looked like Butch, a name Butch. So that's how he got it, supposedly, from Gail.
Name,
the good
all right.
Day one.
resource.
From day
I mean,
one.
he is Frank Jr., so, you probably need some way to... No, yeah, right. No,
he
he's
was-
not a junior because it would be... Because
No,
he's Roger's
that'd be his
son, but he was
grandfather,
still
yeah.
Frank, another Frank in the family, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you probably need some way to distinguish him. So
Yeah.
I was like, Butch. I
Well,
guess.
like we said last week, Mitch and I always knew him as Butch.
Yeah.
I mean, today
I
was the
wondered how
first day
far
I
back
found
that
out.
nickname went, and
Yeah.
last week we read that it was
At
way
least a
back.
toddler.
Yeah. At least a toddler, and now we know he was from day one, Dr. Shepard.
Yeah,
Okay,
Dr.
You
Shepard.
look like a Butch. All right.
There you go.
That story must have clearly gotten to Bruce, so because he referred to him as Butch. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, the things we learn. All right. Well, we're going to start today with a couple of letters about Bruce's travels across the United Kingdom. And first up, Bruce wrote a letter on February 4th, 1944, about English culture. So in his own words.
Dear Mom and Dad, just a few words that will help me to catch up for the last few days that I've missed writing to you. I sent out a cable to you yesterday afternoon and wrote a letter last night. If this letter isn't too sharp, it's because I'm doing it at 5 in the morning. However, I'm getting used to odd hours. When this is all over, I'll have to get used to regular hours again. I'm getting so I can lose sleep one day and I can make it up the next. Of late, there doesn't seem to be too much to write about. Perhaps it's because I'm getting used to the country and so I don't see things anymore. I'll admit it now looks perfectly normal to see cars driving on the left side of the road, or to buy with shillings and pounds, and to hear people talk with never once pronouncing an H. From all this sort of talk, you'll think that I'm getting to be an Englishman in spirit. Well, the most incorrigible note of all this country compared with our own is the vast difference in the standard of living. Honestly, you wouldn't believe some of the inconveniences that they put up with simply because they've been doing it that way for the last 100 years or so. Because the country is proud of its past, it seems to resist modernism in any form. This doesn't mean that the country is backward, it's just that they place more emphasis on the old culture. As an example, if you were to build a new house in the most modern design with all modern appliances, your neighbor with his old house would say, "Oh yes, it's a fine house, but it's so new. It's a good house, but mine is over 2 centuries old." This would make the old house seem most preferable in the true English sense. I don't say that this is always the case, but it explains a lot of why the country is old and modern conveniences are at a premium. Modern plumbing is one of the things that they don't seem to be bothered with a bit. However, to qualify some of their reasoning, it must be understood that they don't have much in raw materials to work with. I finished that last line 3 days after I started the letter. I'll do better, I hope. Your pictures were mailed today, and there is 2 for you, 1 for each of my brothers and sisters, and 1 for Jim. I'm also sending Margaret's in the same package. Will you please mail them to her? God bless you and good night. Your devoted son, Bruce.
Mention of Jim, his uncle.
Yeah.
Uncle Jim. I haven't mentioned him in a while. So he's sending him pictures from the ones that he got taken in London from a couple episodes ago. But yeah, I love how he's like fascinated with how old things are.
Yeah.
I think he pretty much nailed American versus English culture.
Yeah, same.
For sure. Well, on February 5th, Bruce and a few others, including Major Odell, were ordered to go to Durham, Scotland. I couldn't make sense of the Army order. It was one of the things that I found on the 306 historical website. There was an Army order that said these men had to go to Scotland. There were a lot of abbreviations and stuff in there that I couldn't make sense of. But one thing I could figure out was they were there to carry out instructions from the commanding officer. So I have no idea. But it tracks because Bruce didn't fly any missions until like the month of February 1944 until February 20th. So like the first most of the month he was in Scotland for something.
Interesting.
So he must have been busy there. I have no idea. But he did write a long letter to his family about his time in Scotland. And I think we have most of it here. But yeah, spoiler alert, he loves it. In his own words.
February 7th, 1944. Dear Mom and Dad, a short while ago I was up in Scotland on business, so I'll try to write a few things about that country. Though it's still a part of Great Britain, it definitely isn't England, and any Scotchman will tell you this on the least provocation. Even the country doesn't look the same. Their cities are more like our own cities, with wide streets, hills, streetcars, and the girls dressed like our own girls back home. I flew up one afternoon, and so I arrived at the field about at nightfall. In England, I wouldn't have stood a chance of getting a ride into Edinburgh, 15 minutes or so away, but all I had to do was mention it to RAF officers at the field, and they immediately arranged for a car to take me and my crew into the city. Their hospitality proves all these Scotch stories of being tightwads untrue. They are ever so much nicer than the average English, and they don't try to hold you up on prices like our limey friends do. I paid 6 shillings a night for a nice comfortable room and breakfast of sausage and eggs, not powdered eggs, but real ones. The ride in from the field was really beautiful. We were right on the ocean side, and the sun setting on the ocean was beautiful. All the coastline is ringed by gnarled old trees that are bent from the strong winds. You drive on nice roads almost continually, bordered on the land side by a well-laid stone wall. All the wayside home and land looks prosperous, and like the occupants were enjoying life. If you inquire for directions from anyone, from a 10-year-old to the oldest man, they'll actually go out of their way to help you. One actually did go 3 miles out of the way to help us coming back to the field. Edinburgh is a fine city with very good buses and streetcars. Overlooking the city is Edinburgh Castle, that is the most impressive of any I've seen to date. It is situated on a hill, I should say, was about 500 feet high, and its lofty towers go up 100 feet or so higher. It's a sheer drop, and it's understandable how it was able to withstand a siege of 2 whole years in medieval times. After dinner in the large, distinguished dining hall of the Cumberland Hotel, the city's finest, I strolled up to dance one night and had a swell time. I met a Scotch lassie who I could listen to for a year and not get tired of her brogue. We walked up toward the castle. It was a full moon and just enough mist around the top of the spires to make it look almost like a movie. She told me all the historic things about the castle, and believe me, she knew her history. She showed me where Mary, Queen of Scots, lived, how some old enemy had tried to storm the high castle walls only to be thrown back by the defenders. I must have walked 5 miles that night, but didn't even notice until I got back to my room and took off my shoes. How many times I've wished you could see some of these things with me. I thought of that several times while I was up there. I only hope that I'll be able to tell you of these things well enough so that you can see them through my eyes when I get back to you. Although the Scotch have suffered this war the same as the English, I think they do it more gracefully. Don't think I'm criticizing the English. I'm not. It's just that Scotland and its people are so admirable in the way they live. England is so thickly populated that it borders on squalor. Scotland isn't that way at all. Well, I've rambled about long enough. Of course, I could say I'm healthy and in fine spirits. Tomorrow may be another working day, so I'll close for tonight. God bless you, Mom and Dad. Try to keep in there pitching until I can get home. Your loving son, Jay Bruce.
Yeah, I guess Bruce really enjoyed his time in Scotland. Mm-hmm. Yeah, quite an experience there.
We talked about it because I did my student teaching in England, and I got to go to Edinburgh Castle. And
cool.
and Dad, we talked about it. I mean, it was eerily the same. I've never read that letter, so I've never even heard that letter. But he remembered. I mean, he remembered lots of things from when I said something to him about it. So
Wow.
yeah, fond memories.
Oh,
Fond
that's really
memories.
cool.
Well,
Yeah.
that would be great for you guys to do the museum in Thoroughly.
And then go to Scotland. Oh, no, yeah.
We're just adding to the itinerary.
Oh, that castle's
great run.
really, that castle's.
Scotland's definitely on
Beautiful.
my list too. One of these
All right.
days.
We'll get
People were
there.
buried with their dogs. That's what I remember. In the cemetery, they're up there. There were their graves and their dogs, and they had their dogs' names too with them, as I recall. Yeah, so I know it was crazy.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, crazy.
Well, now it's time to get into our segment where we talk about what was going on in the world and in Lowell in February 1944. And we're going to focus mostly on the local news this time, starting with a short letter from February 10th, in his own words.
February 10th, 1944, Thursday. Dear Mom and Dad, I received 3 letters today besides yours, Dad. You said that Charlie was just in to say goodbye. Gosh, is he lucky to be able to get home once in a while. When I get home, I'll do a couple of days line work for you just to see if I could do it. I'll probably burn the first pole I try to climb. I'm glad the kids all got to the Shrine Circus. It'll sure be fun to take them all again someday. I'll bet you had your hands full with all 7 of them. Still, the biggest kick you can get out of a circus is seeing the kids have a good time. By Raj's last letter, they sure had a time of it when he and the kids were sick. Must have been poisoned food or something. He also sent me the sequel to that clipping I sent out of my Stars and Stripes about that Greenville murder. Tell him not to forget to let me know whether they get a conviction or not. I sure hope he doesn't have to go into the Army, but if he does, he's the one to take it in stride. I received your wire, Dad, 2 days after you sent it. Now, if you ever need to send me news in a hurry, you'll have a way to do it. Everything is finer than silk with me, incidentally. You should be receiving my pictures before long, but it does take longer for a package. May God keep you safe till I'm with you again. All my love, son, J. Bruce.
Yeah. So I was very intrigued by this mention of the Greenville murder. So for those of you listeners who are not in Lowell, and we have a few, Greenville is another small town, similar to Lowell, about 20 miles north
Yep.
of here, wouldn't you
Yep.
say? So a murder happening there would be big news.
Yeah.
Like in Greenville, but also in Lowell, you would think. There was nothing really about it in the Lowell Ledger, strangely enough, but Dad, you taught in Greenville for
Yeah.
many years and told me about the Greenville Daily News, which is a paper I did not know existed. So then, of course, guess who was looking through Greenville Daily News issues from 1944?
Down the rabbit hole.
And
There
of
you go.
course, they were all over this story. So apparently, a Greenville high school student named David Filgus was accused of murdering his girlfriend, Patricia Winters, when her body was found inside a burned out car in a field where they apparently parked after a high school dance to make out and drink wine. So this is very scandalous in 1944.
Sure.
So David was in the car, but like there was some suspicion. He says he woke up and next to his burned girlfriend, and I'm like, but then how was he not burned? But then he kind of was, and then he didn't want to call the police. It was very suspicious. He was charged with first-degree murder and prosecuted in Kent County Circuit Court, but not by Roger, but it must have been like a colleague of Roger's. Right. So I would think, right? That's where Roger was a prosecutor
Roger
at the time,
McMahon,
right?
yeah.
Roger McMahon, who's sending Bruce these clippings. He was eventually acquitted for her death due to a lack of evidence. They couldn't prove that she was actually murdered, really.
Should have probably gone for second-degree murder. First degree, I know.
I don't know the difference, but they had like a manslaughter. They thought maybe they would get a manslaughter charge out of it, but it didn't. They found like a wire around her neck, which I was like, come on. This is me trying to solve this cold case now as I'm like in this. I'm like, oh, he did that. But, you know. Like, what do I know, right? But yeah, he was acquitted, and it did make. It doesn't surprise me that Bruce would have it in the Stars and Stripes that he would see it, because I saw it, and through my rabbit hole, the New York Times reported on the verdict when it came through.
That's a pretty unusual
so story. I guess like a tiny little town, and
Sure.
I don't know, but was that ever a story in Greenville? Like when you were there, like it's just like the
Never
lore
heard
of the
about it.
town.
Never heard about it, no.
No.
You worked at the high school. No one. Did you have any of these family members? I know
44,
it's like
54, 64, 74,
I know it's
40
a while,
years.
but I don't know.
Yeah, it was 40 years later.
Oh, gosh.
But the kid that did it was only 15 at the time, or supposedly did it. He was acquitted, I guess. So, he could have been a parent of a kid you had in school. I don't know. So we'll see. I don't know what happened after that to him or to the girl's family or anything. But man, yeah, I can go down a rabbit hole. Now it's a second true crime podcast we have to start, solving the murder of
Oh, my
the Greenville
goodness.
murder.
Oh, my gosh.
You've seen Only Murders in the Building. This is
Yeah.
Only Murders from 1944 or 1940s. But yeah, so
I was more struck by the Shrine Circus mention. We always went to the Shrine Circus.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I love how Bruce thinks Roger and his kids had food poisoning. No, they all had the stomach flu, probably.
Oh, they all, maybe from the Shrine Circus. I mean, if you haven't been there, it's a little bit like.
Well, it's February. He's a man with young kids. I don't know. I mean,
Maybe too much cotton candy.
You know, the Kent County Fair and thinking of eating like that's the circus food.
It could be. I guess so. Maybe. I don't know. I guess it could
They
be.
hadn't invented fried Twinkies yet. Or
That's true.
Peanuts is all I remember.
cotton candy.
Peanuts and cotton candy.
Well,
That's it.
on a lighter note, outside of murder, Bruce
That's
wrote.
why I turned it to the
I know you
circus.
turned it to the circus.
Tried
I
to move us
appreciate
away
that.
from
This letter took a swings. Circus. Let me know if you can catch the killer. But Bruce wrote about much nicer things in a letter from Valentine's Day, 1944, in his own words.
Monday, February 14th, 1944. Dear Mom and Dad, I just latched on to an overseas edition of the Cosmo, and I've been lying on my bed reading the stories, articles, advertisements, and just devouring the thing in general. It's the first pony edition I've seen of the Cosmopolitan and had a bunch of good stories in it. But as far as reading goes, I have plenty to read. Both Time and Newsweek come regularly besides the Reader's Digest, the Yank, and my daily paper, the Stars and Stripes. Last night I wrote a letter to Bern and Helen, and this morning I got thinking, I believe I put my name on the address. Well, I'll probably be getting it back, but don't think I'm getting screwy. Maybe I didn't do it, but I have a hunch I did. A while ago, can't say exactly when, on the way back from a raid, I wrote a letter in the nose of the mist to Jeff. Thought it would give him a kick to know that I was writing while a couple of miles above that cold North Sea. I mailed it a day or so ago, and I don't know whether it was any good or not. If it isn't, I hope he doesn't print it, but after all, the plexiglass nose of a 17 isn't the best place to write a letter. I sent you another wire yesterday. Kind of thought you'd like to be hearing from your youngest. I also used it to ask for some Mrs. Scott merchandise, meaning some of her candy. Just reading her advertisement in the ledger makes me hungry for candy. Either her candy or some homemade or any kind will do. No, Mrs. Horsley, I'm asking for some, so it's okay. We get plenty of gum, but not too much candy, and I always was a sweet tooth. Incidentally, I haven't parted with my top choppers as yet, but when I get time, they're going to come out. They don't bother me. I haven't had a sign of a toothache. God bless you, Mom and Dad. Your loving and ever grateful son, Bruce.
Well, because this letter was written on Valentine's Day, on the top of the page, right above the date, he wrote, Mom, you'll always be my firstest and bestest Valentine.
Aw.
Isn't that cute?
Yes.
And it's like in big letters or whatever. It's adorable. We've heard of these other magazines and papers, Time, Newsweek. We've learned about Stars and Stripes and the Yank. But the only Cosmopolitan magazine I know of probably isn't the same one Bruce was reading. Dale, what can you tell us about Cosmopolitan magazine?
Well, the Cosmopolitan magazine launched in 1886 as a family journal focusing on fashion, household decor, cooking, and other domestic interests. It later transitioned into a literary magazine featuring poetry, travel essays, and short stories with a focus on education and social reform to the mid-1960s. In 1965, it took a big jump. Helen Gurley Brown, a copywriter and author of Sex and the Single Girl, took over as editor, transforming Cosmopolitan into a magazine for the single career woman. Her vision focused on sex, relationships, fashion, beauty, and women's issues, appealing to young audiences, becoming a popular cultural mainstay and a trusted source of information on these topics. Under her guidance, circulation grew significantly and expanded internationally with 63 international editions in 32 languages and distributed in over 100 countries with a circulation of over 3 million in the U.S. alone. Today, Cosmopolitan continues to be a global authority on love and relationships, helping millions of readers explore their lives through the lens of style and pop culture. And I will have examples of the early Cosmo, the Bruce McMahon Cosmo editions, and of course today's modern
But it's
Cosmo
all the
Girl
same
So
magazine.
it
It's
was
amazing.
the same
It's amazing.
Cosmopolitan that
Yes,
I
it
was
was.
referring to.
Yeah.
Okay, but but back in the 40s, it wasn't quite what it is now.
Yeah.
So okay, because I was like, not the Cosmo, right?
Yeah.
Like Bruce wouldn't be reading that.
Yeah, the
Helen
three
Berry
examples show
Brown.
how it moved from just a cover with just writing on the front to
What it is now. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I stand corrected. It kind of was the same magazine that, that we have now. I was also curious in this letter about his request for candy, of course, from Hattie Scott's, which we've talked about before. Did he have to give his permission so that the family could get another ration of candy to send him? Is that what that note to Mr. Horsley was? And I'm not even sure that's the right name. I couldn't quite read Bruce's handwriting, but it was clear he was like doing a little side note in the letter, like, I don't know, letting the ration board person, the post office, like, I don't know. Like, why was he asking someone else? Like, or he was giving his permission.
That name sounds familiar to me, though. So.
That's what it looked like to me, but I didn't know. But I don't know. So, do you think that's what it was? Like, he had to, like, the family couldn't buy more candy than they were rationed.
Maybe.
But then it was for a soldier, so maybe it was okay.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know. Something to find out. I didn't know what even you would search for to find that out, but.
Well, I would
I'm
think
asking
as
for
much as
some,
Bruce
so it's okay.
likes candy, he would probably finagle a way to get more rations if he needed it to get
Yeah.
more candy. I don't
Yeah,
know.
must be what he's doing, right? Well, we would talk about Bruce's missions right about now, but he didn't fly any missions in the beginning of February because he was on business in Scotland, I guess. So we don't have any to report on in this episode, but instead we have something different for our listeners. And we're going to start with a quick letter from Bruce that explains everything that we're going to finish with from February 15th in his own words.
February 15th, 1944. Dear Mom and Dad, there isn't much to write of tonight. I received your letter, Mom, this afternoon. I received a letter from Ron Finch in an answer to a Christmas card I sent. It was a nice letter full of compliments. Maybe you'd like to read it, so I'll send it along with this. By the papers, I see that you are at least having cold weather. At least it spoke of Chicago area being cold. Of course, you know that we don't have snow over here and that many days are like spring at home all through the winter here. Of course, I'm well and feeling fit as a fiddle. We had ham, mashed spuds, baked pineapple, beans, carrots, dumplings for supper tonight. Well, not a bad layout, huh? Well, hope you don't think that I'm starving just because my last wire and letter to you mentioned the candy. I'm getting better food now than I would be in the States, and if the candy is too hard to get, I can eat more jam at meal times. Spoiled, ain't I? Well, this is a short letter, but I'll use Ron's letter to me as a substitute for tonight. Good night, and God bless you, your loving son, Bruce.
So we have the letter from Ron Finch that he sent to Bruce, and we're going to finish with that nice letter today. But before we do, Dale, can you tell us about Ron Finch? Who was this man?
Well, Ron Finch is pretty interesting, especially for Lowell, let alone Bruce. Is a very important person to Bruce. Ronald Finch was born on October 19th, 1902 in Howard City. He graduated from Rockford High School and attended CMU, where he earned 2 letters in football and track and 1 in basketball. He received his Bachelor of Science from Central in 1932 and his Master of Arts from Columbia in 1941. He taught high school for 12 years, teaching in Clare, Lowell, St. Joseph, and Saginaw.
Wow.
At Lowell High School, not known as the Red Arrows back then, I think they were the Red Devils, back then.
Okay.
He was a teacher and coach from 1926 through 1934, and the athletic director from 1928 to 1933. Finch coached football at Lowell as well, where he found great success with 39 straight wins and 2 state track championships. Bruce and many of his friends, Jack Lally being one, were coached by him throughout their college, late junior high years and on. Served Central Michigan University for 25 years, starting in 1937 as a football and track coach. Started the highly successful Central Michigan Relays in 1938. athletic director from 1940 through 1942, and then became head of the physical education department,
Wow.
serving in that capacity until his death in 1962, which all four of us, I think, were part of the when he was physical education department. He served as a head football coach at Central Michigan University from 1937 to 1946, compiling a record of 54, 18, and 1.
Wow.
Finch was also the head basketball coach at Central Michigan for one season in 1943 to 1944,
Yes.
tallying a mark of 10 and 6. In 1938, he founded the Central Michigan Relays to stimulate interest in track and field in the Central Michigan area. 37 schools entered the first year. By 1960, 169 schools with 2,800 participants were involved in the event.
Wow.
He became the first dean of the College of Health, Physical Education, and Recreation when it was formed in 1959. Fieldhouse was renamed the Ronald W. Finch Health and Physical Education Building on October 20th, 1962 in his honor, which all of us spent many a time watching Western basketball games and
There you go.
many concerts there
Yeah.
in Chicago. Tina
America.
Turner.
Tina
Yeah.
Turner?
The Byrds.
Yeah.
Tina Turner
Crosby,
played
Stills,
football?
Nash and Young.
Neil
all those.
Diamond.
Yeah.
I ran exhibition track there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
We have a lot of memories of the old.
When
Finch
I was at
Fieldhouse.
Central, it was the library because the library was being built. So they moved all the books to Finch Fieldhouse in these little
that's
stacks, and you just had to go in there and ask which ones you wanted. So.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. Anyway, fun note.
He and his wife Bernice had 3 sons. He died on April 19th, 1962. And will have many, many, many wonderful pictures of him at Lowell as a high school teacher, and some of his pictures through Central, and of course Bruce and Jack and a lot of the students that he taught at Lowell, and in some of the annual pictures from 1927 to 1932.
Oh yeah.
So.
Great.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
I was shocked, when I found out myself. Like I could go, oh my gosh, he was a teacher right here at Lowell High School.
didn't know that
I
either,
went,
yeah.
oh my Lord.
That is so great. I didn't know that
Yeah.
being at Central.
Yeah.
and-
Oh, you didn't know that?
No,
I
not
never
till really-
mentioned that Finch Fieldhouse.
I don't think so. Not till like doing this
Yeah.
podcast. I don't think, as I realized.
Yeah. And he was a big piece in Bruce and Jack Lely's
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
growth and being good gentlemen, good people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
am
that's so
I
great.
just making this up, or was Dad a pallbearer at his? I think Dad was a pallbearer.
Maybe.
Yeah,
would make
for him.
sense.
Yeah,
It would
I think
make
so.
sense.
Yeah.
Well, without further ado, here is a letter that Coach Ron Finch wrote to Bruce. It's written on Central Michigan College of Education letterhead
Love it.
from this. So, I got to shout that out. I'm an alumni of that. Fire us. All right. Well, in his own words.
January 11th, 1944. Dear Bruce, Mrs. Finch and I were talking just the other night that this was the first time in 15 years that we hadn't received a greeting from you, and then one popped up. The service from where you are in Mount Pleasant must have taken some time, as the letter was postscripted December 6th. Arrived here about January 6th. We're both happy to hear from you, to know you're okay and that you enjoy your work. We know if competitive spirit has anything to do with being a good flyer, you must be tops. The boys are more scattered all over the world. It seems that most of our athletes are in the Army or the Navy Air Corps. I know we'll be proud of the whole gang of you two. Life at school is much different than in normal times. We have 475 Navy varsity 12 boys that will leave here after 1, 2, 3, or 4 semesters and go to midshipman school or into the Navy V5 program, which is the Air Corps. We have 90 V5 boys here too. Tried football this fall, had some fun, but it wasn't like it used to be. Now we take the boys we get and go ahead. Had one good end, one good tackle, and a good fullback. The tackle and the fullback were hurt in our second game and didn't play the rest of the season. These kids are very busy on the schoolwork, as all had to take 2 math classes and 1 physics, or 2 physics and 1 math, on top of their other schoolwork and duties. All had 1 hour of physical training besides football. Kids didn't have spirit like they had when you were here. It seems to me they played so they could get out of town on the trips. Dan is in the Navy, so I'm now basketball coach. To date, we lost to Western and Forest Custer, have won 6 from other small schools, Calvin 2, Kazoo 2, Alma, Grand Rapids Junior College. We've averaged 47 points a game. This week we play GRCC here and Assumption there on Saturday. We plan to finish the season February 4th, and that will finish varsity athletics for this year. We will start football again in July. The T formation was used by a great number of schools this year. Notre Dame used it and really had a ball club. Illinois and Purdue also used it. Purdue is undefeated and tied Michigan for the Big Ten championship. Mount Pleasant High was undefeated and unscored upon this upcoming season. Took Saginaw High and Grand Haven. Was the best team I've ever seen here. Leo Wisniewski coached them as Barbary is in the Navy. Leo is now, and Ray Hack took over down to the high school. Our boys are growing up, Bruce. Ronnie stands up above my nose now, 11 and a half years old, weighs over 100. I keep telling him that when you were a freshman in high school, you weighed 90 pounds. Can still picture you pulling your pants up between plays. Tom weighs 90 pounds, is 8, and Bill, 6, weighs 50 plus. There's never a dull moment at home, I tell you. Hope they're all nice boys as you are too, Bruce. I always have a warm spot in my heart for you, Jack Al, and Jack Bergen. We went through a lot and had a hell of a grand time doing it. Mrs. Finch sends her regards, and we're looking forward to the day when you can sit and visit with us. Keep your chin up, keep pitching, kid. Know you'll make a wonderful record while you're in the service. If I ever get through Lowell, I'll stop in and see you folks and Jack's mother. With kindest personal regards, I'm cordially Ron.
Aw,
Isn't that
this
sweet?
was so nice.
I know, so kind.
And I loved hearing about the CMU football team of 1943 and the one season he coached basketball, as Dale mentioned. Fire up. Did Bruce talk about Coach Finch a lot, like growing up?
Yes, he did.
He did.
Yeah.
Okay.
He talked about the Finch Field House. He was very proud of the fact that they had hand warmers, automatic hand warmers. He said it was the first
Nice. Okay.
building in the United States that had that. I don't know, but
Cool.
that's what Dad told me.
Sounds good.
Very cool.
Oh, that is funny.
I ran into the name Barbary. I just noticed.
Yeah. What's that from?
Well,
That's a central. That's
yes.
a name I recognize from Mount Pleasant.
He's a
also.
prosecuting attorney at Mount Pleasant.
Well, that's not how I know him.
Oh
but
well, Barbary.
that must be a name that's around Mount Pleasant. A
Oh,
lot,
he
maybe.
was assistant principal at Greenville. Hired me for my job.
Okay, maybe not. Maybe that's. I don't know. Maybe that's not what
Played
I'm.
football. His dad and my dad both played football together. So
Oh, wow.
that was a good way to kick off the interview. I went, oh, that's fortunate.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Very cool.
I love the mention of the T formation. This new.
Yeah.
This new.
We had the T formation in high school.
Yeah, we sure did.
Well, there you go. Ron Finch, revolutionary there. He mentions Purdue was undefeated and tied Michigan for the Big Ten championship. We know that because we talked about that in fall when we read the fall 1943 letters.
Yeah.
Bruce
Everybody
was-
else was probably running the single wing.
Yeah. Sure. I'll have to get up on my football history from. I've only seen the old highlights,
more of a
right?
running formation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let-
Well, I thought that was nice to sort of end. We've been talking about Western entirely too much on this podcast, and I did not do this on purpose, but coincidentally, Coach Finch wrote a very nice letter in February of 1944. Well, thank you all for listening to Letters Home. We hope you continue to listen as we go through Bruce's story. You can listen to Letters Home on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Lowell Historical Museum website and YouTube channel. New episodes drop every Thursday. The Lowell Historical Museum has digitized versions of Bruce's letters, so you can read them in full, along with primary sources for most of the people, places, and events we've talked about here today, plus more. You can also follow the Lowell Historical Museum on Facebook and the Letters Home podcast on Instagram at Letters Home Lowell. Thank you to Roger McNaughton for our podcast music and to Lowell Radio for letting us record in their studio at Lowell High School every week. Stream it at lowellradio.org. See you next time.